Most people think population shifts happen slowly, over decades. We tend to believe that the map of America is set in stone, that the powerhouse states will always be powerhouses, and that stability is the norm. But in the last 4 years, something unprecedented has happened across America. Entire communities have started moving at a pace the country has not seen in modern history. Families are giving up long-held zip codes. Professionals are walking away from cities that once defined their careers. And middle-class households are leaving states they assumed would be home forever. According to the United States Census Bureau, this massive reshuffling shows up clearly in a metric called net domestic migration. But numbers on a page don't capture the feeling of walking down a street where every third house has a for sale sign. They don't capture the quiet panic of a family sitting at a kitchen table, realizing that their paycheck no longer covers the cost of existing in the place they love. From April 2020 to July 2024, the results reveal a dramatic shift. In some states, housing costs have disconnected so far from wages that even solid earners are being priced out. In others, taxes, insurance, or basic cost of living are rising faster than paychecks can keep up. And across several regions, decades of economic stagnation or climate-related risks have finally pushed residents to look somewhere else for stability. We are witnessing a silent crisis that is reshaping the geography of opportunity in the United States. This isn't just about moving trucks, it is about the collapse of the social and economic contract in some of America's most famous regions. Some of these places were magnets for opportunity not long ago. Others were considered stable, predictable, even idyllic. But during the last few years, the ground shifted. For a growing number of people, staying simply became too expensive, too stressful, or too uncertain. By the end of this countdown, you will understand exactly why millions of Americans are moving, and how these shifts are redefining U.S. migration trends for 2026. We are counting down the 10 states Americans are leaving the most, and more importantly, the reasons behind those choices. Stay with us, because number 1 will change how you view the future of the American economy. Number 10, Ohio. For generations, Ohio was the dependable heartbeat of the Midwest. It feels familiar and steady, the kind of place where people expect stability, strong communities, and a cost of living that makes sense. It was the industrial core where you could raise a family on a single income and retire with dignity. But as we look toward 2026, that image of stability is cracking. From April 2020 through July 2024, the state saw a net domestic migration loss of about 38,000 residents. On the surface, that number might not look like a collapse, yet it reflects a deeper shift that has been building for years. It is a slow leak that is draining the state of its future. Much of the problem traces back to Ohio's industrial legacy. Cities like Cleveland, Youngstown, and Toledo are still dealing with the aftermath of factory closures, aging downtowns, and economic slowdowns that never fully reversed. While there are pockets of revitalization, they aren't enough to stop the bleeding. Even as Columbus grows and attracts new companies, the overall momentum is not strong enough to counterbalance the steady outflow of younger workers. This is the brain drain trap. Many residents in their 20s see limited advancement at home. They look at the economic landscape and see stagnation. They look toward states with faster growth in technology, healthcare, engineering, and logistics, and they realize that staying in Ohio means capping their potential. The climate does not help either. Long stretches of gray skies, lake-effect snow, and harsh winters push many residents to imagine a lifestyle with more sun and fewer heating bills. When they compare costs, wages, and opportunities in states across the South and West, the decision to leave often becomes practical rather than emotional. Ohio isn't declining outright, but it is losing ground to places that feel more dynamic. As one former resident put it, it's not that Ohio is bad, it's just that everywhere else feels like it's moving forward, while we are standing still. Number 9, Minnesota. Minnesota is a state that consistently ranks well in quality of life surveys. It has a reputation for excellent healthcare, strong education, and the famous Minnesota nice culture. It is the land of 10,000 lakes and stable neighborhoods. Yet, the data tells a different story. From April 2020 to July 2024, Minnesota recorded a net domestic migration loss of nearly 48,000 residents. This is a stark reminder that a state can have strong amenities on paper but still struggle to keep people in practice. The reality of 2026 is that nice is no longer enough to justify the cost. The Twin Cities offer cultural attractions and large employers, but they also come with rising housing costs and some of the highest state and local tax burdens in the Midwest. For many middle-class families, especially younger couples trying to buy their first home, the math is breaking. The financial gap between staying in Minnesota versus relocating to Wisconsin, the Dakotas, or the Sun Belt has widened enough to spark serious reconsideration. Then there is the weather. Minnesota's winters are not merely cold, they are a survival event. They are long, dark, and defined by snowstorms that reshape daily life for months on end. The emotional and financial toll of heating a home and maintaining a vehicle through extreme cold pushes some residents to their breaking point. Public safety discussions after 2020 also played a role. While opinions vary, a portion of residents decided they wanted a different environment entirely, one with less political friction or more predictable public policy. Minnesota still offers stability, but the rising cost-to-benefit ratio has convinced many that their future lies elsewhere. It is a state caught in a trap of high taxes and harsh climate, losing its most productive citizens to states that ask for less and offer more warmth, both physically and financially. Number 8, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a state filled with history, tradition, and strong regional identity. From the steel mills of Pittsburgh to the historic streets of Philadelphia, it is a cornerstone of the American story. Yet, the modern chapter of that story is one of departure. From April 2020 through July 2024, the state lost roughly 49,000 residents to other states. What makes this significant is not just the size of the decline, but the long-term pattern it represents. Pennsylvania is suffering from a chronic economic fatigue. For many Pennsylvanians, the opportunities they want simply are not where they grew up. Across the state, older industrial cities like Johnstown, Erie, Scranton, and even parts of the Pittsburgh metro area continue to feel the aftermath of decades of manufacturing decline. These towns, once the engines of the middle class, are now hollowing out. While some neighborhoods have rebuilt pockets of growth, many younger residents find the job market too limited compared to faster expanding metros in the South and Mountain West. Once people leave after college or early in their careers, they often do not return. This exodus of youth is leaving the state with an aging population and a shrinking tax base. Taxes also influence the decision to move. Pennsylvania's flat income tax looks manageable on the surface, but local property taxes and school district levies can cut deeply into household budgets. In communities where wages have stalled, adding aging infrastructure and uneven school performance makes relocating look less like a gamble and more like a practical step toward affordability. Older residents contribute to the trend as well. Many retirees are choosing warmer, lower tax states like Florida or the Carolinas, accelerating the overall outflow. Pennsylvania remains a culturally rich state, but the numbers show a slow, steady drain of residents seeking better value and stronger economic momentum. Number 7, Maryland. Maryland is a state that looks exceptional on paper. It boasts the highest median income in the country, strong schools in many suburbs, and proximity to the power center of Washington, D.C. It should be a population magnet, a place where everyone wants to live. But between April 2020 and July 2024, Maryland still lost more than 120,000 residents to other states. This is one of the largest domestic outflows in the Mid-Atlantic, and it exposes a critical flaw in the high-income model, affordability. The core issue is that while people in Maryland earn a lot, it costs even more to live there. The financial pressure of living near the Washington-Baltimore corridor has been rising for years. Housing costs have climbed to the point where many middle-class families feel squeezed, especially when paired with rising property taxes, insurance premiums, and childcare expenses. Even households with solid six-figure incomes find that their money simply vanishes into the cost of living. Traffic is another quiet but powerful force driving people away. Commutes on the Beltway and I-95 routinely drain hours each day, stealing time from families and adding stress that compounds over years. For many residents, the stress eventually outweighs the benefits of living close to federal or tech sector jobs. Remote work accelerated this shift dramatically. Once people realized they could keep their careers while living in a cheaper state, Maryland began losing residents to places like the Carolinas, Florida, Texas, and even nearby West Virginia. Why pay a premium to sit in traffic when you can work from a larger house in a cheaper state? Maryland still offers stability and access to major institutions, but the combination of high expenses and chronic congestion has convinced many families that their quality of life would be better elsewhere. It is a classic case of a golden handcuff economy, high wages that are immediately swallowed by high costs. Number 6, Louisiana. Louisiana is a place that feels like nowhere else in America. It is a state defined by a deep, soulful identity, jazz in the streets of New Orleans, the smell of Cajun cuisine in the air, and a cultural rhythm that moves slower than the rest of the country. For decades, this unique flavor of life kept people rooted here, bound by family, festivals, and a love for the land. But as we enter 2026, that cultural anchor is snapping under the weight of a brutal economic reality. From April 2020 to July 2024, the state lost roughly 129,000 residents through net domestic migration. For a mid-sized state, that is not just a decline, it is a demographic hemorrhage. The reasons behind this exodus are hard to ignore and painful to admit. The biggest pressures come from long-standing economic stagnation. Louisiana suffers from high poverty rates and limited economic mobility. Its job market is heavily dependent on petrochemicals, ports, and tourism. While those industries bring money in, they do not consistently create the kind of broad, middle-class opportunities that keep young families anchored long-term. This has created a massive opportunity gap. Many young residents look toward Texas, Georgia, or the Midwest and see places where wages climb faster and career options feel more stable. They are leaving not because they want to, but because they feel they have to. Crime is another major factor tearing at the social fabric. Cities like New Orleans and Baton Rouge have struggled with high violent crime rates, pushing families to seek safer, more predictable communities for their children. When you add in aging public services and uneven school performance, the appeal of leaving becomes overwhelming. But what truly sets Louisiana's collapse apart is the climate risk. This is the insurance trap. Hurricane seasons have grown more damaging, and coastal erosion continues to shrink communities along the Gulf. Insurance costs have risen so sharply that for many, homeownership is becoming a liability rather than an asset. For some residents, the cycle of rebuilding after storm has simply become too much financially and emotionally. Louisiana remains vibrant and beautiful, but the combination of economic strain, safety concerns, and climate pressure has driven tens of thousands to seek a more secure future elsewhere. Number 5, Massachusetts. Massachusetts is arguably the intellectual capital of America. It is one of the most educated and economically powerful states in the country. With world-class universities like Harvard and MIT, thriving hospital systems, and a booming biotech sector, it has some of the highest wages in the United States. On the surface, it looks like a success story. Yet, there is a paradox here. From April 2020 through July 2024, this wealthy state lost more than 162,000 residents to other parts of the country. Why are people fleeing a place with so much money and opportunity? The answer is simple: the success penalty. Living in Massachusetts has become financially overwhelming for a large share of its population. The housing market tells the clearest, most brutal story. Home prices shot up rapidly during the early pandemic years, rising more than 20% in 2021 and another 30% in 2022 in some greater Boston areas. For many households, even strong salaries could not keep pace with this explosion. Recent housing reports estimate that a buyer now needs an annual income of well over $160,000 just to afford an entry-level home near Boston. Think about that. You can be in the top tier of earners and still struggle to buy a starter home. Renters feel the pressure too, facing some of the highest monthly costs in the Northeast. But it's not just housing. Taxes and everyday expenses amplify the strain. Groceries, utilities, transportation, and insurance all sit comfortably above the national average. For families balancing student loans, childcare, or elder care responsibilities, the financial load becomes unsustainable. Remote work accelerated the shift, acting as an escape valve. Once professionals realized they could keep their high-paying Boston jobs while living in a cheaper state, the departures began. States like New Hampshire, Maine, Florida, and the Carolinas became increasingly attractive alternatives. Massachusetts remains intellectually vibrant, but the affordability crisis has pushed many residents to look for a more balanced and less stressful lifestyle elsewhere. It is a state that is pricing out its own future. Number 4, New Jersey. New Jersey has always had a lot working in its favor. It offers proximity to two major economic hubs, New York City and Philadelphia, along with some of the strongest public schools in the nation and a diverse economy. For decades, it was the ultimate suburban dream for city workers ready to settle down. Yet, between April 2020 and July 2024, the state lost more than 192,000 residents through net domestic migration. That makes New Jersey one of the top states people are leaving. The exit doors are jammed, and the reasons are as consistent as they are overwhelming. The biggest factor, the one that comes up in almost every conversation, is property taxes. New Jersey has the highest property tax rates in the entire country. Many households find themselves paying the equivalent of a second mortgage every single year just in taxes to the local government. When you combine that tax burden with rising home prices, expensive insurance, and some of the highest commuting costs in the Northeast, the financial equation breaks. Even families with solid, dual incomes find themselves struggling to keep up. For many, the math works only as long as everyone in the household is earning at full capacity. If one person loses a job or gets sick, the whole structure is at risk. And even then, it can feel like a stretch. Remote work dramatically reshaped the landscape here as well. Once residents realized they no longer needed to be within commuting distance of Manhattan or Philly 5 days a week, the justification for paying those high taxes evaporated. Thousands began relocating to nearby Pennsylvania, the Carolinas, Florida, or Texas. The difference in monthly expenses can be thousands of dollars, making the decision far less emotional and far more practical. New Jersey still offers safety and excellent schools, but the cost of maintaining that lifestyle has pushed nearly 200,000 residents to decide it simply isn't worth it anymore. Number 3, Illinois. Illinois is a state in deep trouble. It has been losing residents for well over a decade, and the most recent numbers show the trend is far from slowing down. From April 2020 through July 2024, the state recorded a net domestic migration loss of more than 418,000 people. Let that number sink in. Over 400,000 people gone. That is one of the largest population outflows in the entire nation. And unlike some states where losses fluctuate year to year, Illinois' decline has become a steady, entrenched pattern with deep structural roots. One major factor is the overall cost of living, driven heavily by property taxes. Like New Jersey, Illinois consistently ranks among the highest in the country for property taxes, burdening homeowners and discouraging long-term investment. Even middle-income families find themselves paying far more than they would in neighboring states like Indiana or Iowa, where taxes and housing costs are dramatically lower. Chicago, while still a major economic center and a world-class city, also plays a complicated role in this exodus. Many residents cite concerns about crime, uneven neighborhood investment, and rising city expenses as primary reasons to leave. The dynamic of the city has changed. Some residents who once commuted downtown now work remotely and no longer feel tied to the city or its high costs. Others leave simply because their income stretches 2 or 3 times farther elsewhere. Meanwhile, the state continues to face long-term financial pressures, including massive pension obligations that limit its ability to lower taxes or expand services. This creates a fiscal trap. The state needs money, so it taxes residents, which causes residents to leave, which leaves the state needing even more money. For many families, the uncertainty becomes too heavy, and relocating starts to feel like the safer long-term choice. Illinois still has strengths, cultural depth, economic influence, and world-class institutions, but none have stopped the sustained outflow. The people are voting with their feet, and right now, they are voting to leave. Number 2, New York. New York remains one of the most recognizable and influential places in the world. It is the center of finance, media, and culture. But its population numbers tell a very different, far darker story. From April 2020 to July 2024, the state lost roughly 966,000 residents through net domestic migration. That is the second largest loss in the entire country, a figure that rivals the population of entire cities vanishing into thin air. What is striking is who is leaving. It isn't just retirees looking for sunshine. It is middle-class families, longtime residents, and even higher-income earners who once felt anchored to the state's economic power. Affordability is the central issue driving this collapse. Housing in New York, especially in and around New York City, has become nearly unreachable for many households. Even renters face enormous costs, with prices rising faster than wage growth. When you add in high state income taxes, expensive insurance, transportation costs, and some of the steepest childcare prices in the nation, the financial pressure becomes unsustainable for a wide range of residents. Quality of life concerns also influence these decisions. While New York City continues to attract young professionals and global talent, many existing residents cite rising disorder, long commutes, and burnout as factors pushing them toward states with a calmer pace and more space for the same money. Remote work was the final accelerant. Once people realized they could keep their jobs without paying that New York premium, the floodgates opened. Residents moved to Florida, New Jersey suburbs, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, places offering lower costs and more room to grow. New York is still vibrant, innovative, and magnetic, but the sheer scale of the outflow shows how difficult it has become for everyday residents to build long-term stability there. The city that never sleeps is waking up to a harsh reality. Its people are tired of paying the price. Number 1, California. And here we are at number 1. The Golden State. California is still the dream in many people's minds: ocean views, mountains, world-leading industries, and near-perfect weather. But from April 2020 through July 2024, the state experienced the largest domestic population loss in the entire country. More than 1,234,000 residents moved to other states. No other state even comes close to that scale. This is not just a migration, it is an evacuation. The reasons are tied directly to the crushing realities of daily life in California. Housing is the biggest force behind the exodus. In many coastal metros, the price of a typical home has climbed so high that even strong, six-figure incomes cannot keep up. Renters face the same pressure, with monthly payments that often rival mortgage costs in more affordable states. Add in high state income taxes, expensive utilities, rising insurance premiums, and the general cost of living, and families across the middle class feel squeezed from every direction. It creates a lifestyle trap. You live in paradise, but you work so hard to afford it that you never get to enjoy it. Quality of life pressures add to the equation. Long commutes, terrifying wildfire seasons, drought concerns, and the emotional weight of living in areas where the cost of everything rises faster than paychecks all push residents to consider alternatives. Remote work removed the last barrier. Once people realized they could keep California-level salaries while living in a cheaper state like Texas, Arizona, or Nevada, departures accelerated. Californians aren't leaving because the state lacks beauty or opportunity. They are leaving because they want a version of that lifestyle that does not demand financial sacrifice at every turn. And that is why California stands at the top of this list, the largest outflow, the most dramatic shift, and the clearest symbol of how the United States is being reshaped by cost and migration. The patterns across these 10 states make one thing clear: Americans are moving not for curiosity, but for survival and stability. Housing costs, taxes, insurance, and shifting job markets are reshaping where people can realistically build a future. These decisions are personal for each family, yet together, they form one of the most significant U.S. migration trends in recent decades. As these changes accelerate, states gaining residents will need to expand housing and infrastructure, while states losing population will face tough choices about budgets, services, and long-term planning. We are watching the map of American opportunity be redrawn in real time. Which state on this list surprised you the most? And would you ever consider moving to escape the rising cost of living? Let us know in the comments below. If this breakdown helped you see the economic reality more clearly, hit subscribe to US Reality Check. We are committed to exposing the trends that the mainstream news overlooks. Don't just watch the shift happen, understand it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next reality check.